Uh, Good morning again, and welcome back to our next session. Excellent. So I would like to introduce Mr. David Smith, who is the representative of the Barbados IGF, and he will give us a report on some of their activities, um, well, in the within the last year. So David, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Nigel. Let me just share my screen. Can you see the slide?
Yes, we can. We're seeing it.
Okay. All right, thank you. I just want to give you a short report on the activities over the last year, but most importantly, the 2019 Barbados Internet Governance Forum. It took a slightly different format. The IGF itself was the same, but we combined it last year with some other fairly important, some other fairly important activities that we called Smart Barbados Week 2019. Smart Barbados Week was an attempt to start to sort of drive a national digital agenda for the country. So what happened was we combined the IGF we got together the Internet chapter of the Barbados Society, the Barbados chapter of the Internet Society, got together with some other key stakeholders, namely the Ministry of Innovation, Science and Smart Technology, the Barbados Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and the Barbados International Business Association, came together to host Smart Barbados Week last year from October 1st to 4th. And it was meant to be a 4-day national symposium on innovation and digital transformation. There were 3 key goals that we wanted to sort of establish and use the symposium for. That was to define what it would mean for Barbados to be a smart nation, identify some strategies and actions necessary to get there, and to build a national consensus necessary to start driving the effort. The Smart Barbados Week comprised of 4 key events. The Smart Barbados Week conference itself, which was a 2-day conference on October 1st and 2nd, a digital technologies workshop on October 3rd, the Barbados Internet Governance Forum on October 4th, and a Smart Barbados Week Expo that ran in parallel to the other 3 events. I'm going to now sort of move specifically into the 2019 Internet Governance Forum. And because of the way we constructed Smart Barbados Week, we wanted to be sure that the Internet Governance Forum provided unique value and unique benefits and wasn't sort of lost in the shuffle of the events of the week. So some of the things that we ensured was, 1, the IGF was free to the public, whereas the other events of the week, you essentially had to pay to participate. That was important to us because in wanting to get feedback and the voice of all stakeholders and all citizens, it was important that we didn't only get the voice of those who could afford to attend, but we needed to be able to hear from everyone. So we insisted that the IGF, as always, remain free. We also made sure that the IGF was sort of like highly focused around issues of development and inclusion and protection of the citizens who will ultimately be the ones to contribute to and benefit from this digital transformation exercise. So the format of the IGF consisted of an early morning plenary that were introductory remarks, basically similar to the CIGF, introductory remarks about ISOC and the IGF. And then we had a presentation by the 3 winning teams of the Caribbean Girls Hackathon, the Barbados leg of it. ISOC Barbados had actually partnered with Caribbean Girls Hack to facilitate the Barbados leg of the Caribbean Girls Hackathon. So as a result of which, the winning teams, we allowed them to sort of present their solutions at the IGF, and that was very well received. After that, we had parallel tracks running for most of the rest of the day, and then an evening wrap up. And we'll sort of, there's a video at the end that sort of shows basically a bit of the discussions from what happened in the various discussion sessions. So we had 5 key takeaways from the IGF. One, coming out of the discussions, it was recognized that we need an inclusive approach to digital transformation, specifically a whole of society approach. Every stakeholder community needs to be engaged. We also recognize that solutions need to be people-centric, and people made the point was continually made that we need to start from people and not from tech. And that also feeds into the next point, that we, the tech community, should specifically seek out input from non-tech persons in order to create the best possible solutions for everyone. Also, it was also pointed out that we cannot move forward in an online-only posture because there are still persons who don't have access to the internet and its services. So to move to an online-only posture would leave those people as truly second-class citizens, which isn't acceptable. The next need we recognize is to improve digital literacy across all levels of society. We had several discussions in which parents spoke about the need to be given tools and training to allow them to monitor and manage their children's internet and smart device usage. We had educators speaking about the need to be taught how to redesign their own training courses so that they, in conducting online education, they aren't simply duplicating chalkboard, the previous chalkboard metaphor. And we spoke about best practices in how we can take the information that comes from the best teachers who've adapted, and how we can sort of start moving that into the broader teaching space, so all of the teachers are benefiting from that knowledge. Also, we mentioned specifically senior citizens who are not used to thinking and acting digitally first, in order to get them the training that enables them to leverage the online platforms that are rapidly becoming available. We also spoke about the need to maintain up-to-date legislation. The laws governing the digital space, such as the recently passed Data Protection Act, need to be responsive because of the speed of evolution of the space. The public needs to be further educated on what rights they have and what their responsibilities are with respect to the digital space and the laws governing them. And then we need to put mechanisms in place to allow rapid enacting and refinement of those laws as the space continues to evolve. The fourth key takeaway is a need to reimagine education. The education system itself needs to be reimagined in order to create lifelong learners, entrepreneurs, and content creators who use all of the tools we have at our disposal. It was recognized that culturally, we tend to very much in Barbados, I can't speak for the rest of the Caribbean, but very much in Barbados, tend to be content consumers. And we needed to start looking at how we can use the tools and the lower barriers to entry to start becoming content creators and start monetizing the content we make. This requirement is going to continue as AI and automation starts to reduce the amount of easily repeatable work. So traditional jobs become sort of phased out and new jobs start to come on stream. And it was very much borne out by the presentation from the Caribbean Girls Hackathon participants that given the right technology, entrepreneurial training, and some exposure to the right opportunities, that they could very quickly prototype solutions. And their challenge was solutions specifically that address gender-based violence. But the girls, and they were secondary school students, they did very good jobs in terms of creating prototypes for possible solutions to help address those. The fifth, and final key takeaway, and this was sort of like a lesson learned, is the power of collaboration. I thought Barbados could never put together Smart Barbados Week or the IGF of that scale on our own. And it was key for us. One of the key learnings is that the different stakeholders have different audiences with whom they already have influence and whom they can bring into the dialogue. And we included stakeholders as, excuse me, was indicated this morning, representing the government, the private sector, and civil society. We also had panel discussions that also included technical persons. We also included academia, as was suggested. So we were able to get a very sort of a rich series of discussions with diverse perspectives. And then finally, the collaboration for the event could be used as a basis for future collaboration to execute initiatives arising from it. So what I would like to do now is just show you a short video that sort of shows some clips from some of the different discussions and gives you an idea of what happened.
I think one of the things that we are most wanting to do through the Caribbean Girls Hack is to really inspire girls to pursue careers and studies in tech, so that we begin to create a robust ecosystem of women in tech.
Everybody thinks that technology is mostly held by men, which it is. So it was very eye-opening to see that how many women were really involved in it, but people still see it as a male industry, and to see just that females can do the same exact thing, and if anything, we could do it better.
We now live in an era where data is far more important than it's ever been. Yes. In large part, most of the services we use and partake of and derive value from, they're data-driven. And so with that in mind, and with the market going behind data and looking for ways to make use of and to provide services and so on, it's far more important now to offer some amount of protection to the persons that the data relates to.
Yes, even though the act is there, it is not enough for us as individuals to just say, okay, the legislation is there. Much of it lies on us, the individual, because the data actually belongs to us. And we need to remember that we have responsibilities where our information is concerned.
That instead of schools and individual teachers and these wonderful stars of teachers who are doing great things with technology, we need to pull them together and change at the paradigm shift across the whole of Barbados.
So in the UK, this is what's happening. You have students who have now leapfrogged the tech capability of teachers in schools. And what's happening is it's now, in their minds, making education redundant. And I would like Barbados not to fall into that trap.
When people think of a future, they think of one that's ruled by AI, and it doesn't have to be like that. Has been so easily perpetuated by popular culture and the mass media, but it doesn't have to be like that.
When we talk about this access to the internet, one of our focus is to find out why the internet is important to all of us. Why is it important? Because it is bringing opportunities. It is bringing change.
So that was basically a sort of explanation of what happened at the Internet Governance Forum itself. Coming out of that, there have been several sort of engagements between the government and various civil society stakeholder groups, as well as the private sector and various consulting organizations to start driving the digital transformation process forward. And we look forward to reporting on further progress as we move forward. So thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you, David. I saw a question come in asking about if you had planned a date as yet for 2020. Did I miss that, or do you have any comment on that?
We have not planned a date for 2020. Obviously, the nature of the pandemic has made sort of in-person gathering, virtually impossible, and a virtual IGF. We're sort of like not really certain how we would make that work, especially given how last year's IGF was incorporated into Smart Barbados Week. So we may end up sort of pushing it back until 2021 and having another Smart Barbados Week in 2021 with the IGF as part of it.
I see. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. We'll have a further Q&A session later on in this session just before lunch. So if there anything else comes up, you can comment at that point.
Certainly. Thank you.
I don't think we'll have an update from St. Vincent and the Grenadines, but the Trinidad and Tobago IGF has provided a video for us that encapsulates their event from 2020. It was held, I think, probably like the 31st of January, 2020. And that would probably have been their third edition, but I think all will be told in the video. So Shanae, if you can have it now, please, if you could run it.
Hi, this is Dev Gosine welcoming you to the Trinidad and Tobago Internet Governance Forum 2020. This Internet Governance Forum is hosted by the Trinidad and Tobago Multi-Stakeholder Advisory Group. The theme of this year's IGF is the Internet and You, ensuring the Internet's future. This year, the forum was held on the 31st of January 2020 at the Naparima College Auditorium in San Fernando, Trinidad and Tobago. Welcoming you and bringing opening remarks is our very own chair of the Trinidad and Tobago Multi-Stakeholder Advisory Group, Ajmal Nazir. He mentioned that our first IGF was in 2016. At this IGF, we have support from local, regional, and international communities, for which we are extremely grateful. We have given much importance to educate our local markets. All deliberations of previous and this IGF would contribute and have contributed to the discussions of the regional and global IGFs. The next person to bring greetings via a video message was Vint Cerf. Vint prides himself as being the chief internet evangelist. He questioned, how well are we keeping our data secure regardless of where it is being stored? He also questioned, how do we protect ourselves online? He commented on the abundance of misinformation and disinformation proliferating the internet. He suggested the greater need for critical thinking to sift the truth from an environment of misinformation and disinformation. Again, bringing us greetings via a video message was Anriette Esterhuvsen. Anriette Esterhuvsen is the chair of the IGF Multi-Stakeholder Advisory Group. She has recently been elected. This actually is her first address as the IGF MAG chair. And she mentioned that IGFs must be committed to inclusion. IGFs provide an opportunity for persons with different experiences to work together to find solutions. She challenged the TTIGF to be a beacon to the small island states in the region to address issues such as natural disasters and the use of digital technology in sustaining economic development. She said there were 3 tracks to the 2020 Global IGF, such as data, inclusion, and trust. 2 new issues emerging as important priorities are climate change sustainability and the digital economy, how its implementation is affecting the workplace. Bringing greetings, again via a video message, was the Honorable Allyson West, Minister of Public Administration. The Honorable Minister mentioned that there's a National Development Plan 2030 which addresses ICT in the development of Trinidad and Tobago. Her mandate is to drive ICT development, modernize and transform the public service, and amplify the use of digital governance. There's a present tendency for inward spending. However, there should now be a focus on citizen spending so that the services are made easier and more efficient for citizens and businesses. There is now a trust for greater digital penetration. We now move into the panel sessions, and our first panel is fake news and its impact on you. Our expert panelists include Mark Lindesay, editor, Tech News TT, and opinion leader, columnist from the Newsday, one of our local newspapers. We have Sergeant Daniel Hernandez, head of Cyber and Social Media Unit, Trinidad and Tobago Police Services. We have also Asha Javid, senior multimedia investigative journalist from the Caribbean Communications Network, CCN. Also is well-known Shernan Osepa, manager, regional affairs for Latin America and the Caribbean Bureau of the Internet Society, ISOC. And our moderator is our very own from the Trinidad and Tobago Multistakeholder Advisory Group, Director Anita Sohan. And of course, this is a photo of our first panel in session at the Trinidad and Tobago Internet Governance Forum. I must say it was a very interesting and informative panel. These are some of the takeaways from fake news and its impact on you. Is fake news false, inaccurate, or misleading information? Is there a deliberate purpose or agenda behind the fake news? Bloggers may quote unverified information and is interpreted by the audience as true. Most popular fake news stories were widely shared on Facebook rather than mainstream news sources. Statistics show that 62% of adults in the US get their news from social media. It is evident that many persons use social media as their prime source for news. People believe what they read because they do not critically assess or fact check. Avoid fake news by using trusted sources. Fake news is never given the opportunity to get cleaned up. The internet should not be penalized for fake news. Should there be a regulatory body to oversee press coverage? Freedom of press versus personal privacy. Are there boundaries to freedom of press and or freedom of expression? This was pursued by Damian Tambini. We now move to the youth-led collaborative workshop. This was particularly interesting. The format of this session was that when the youngsters entered the auditorium, each one of them were given a little slip with a particular color. And each color, as we're seeing here, is associated with a particular topic. So white, for example, was the good, the bad, and the potential of online communities. Blue was big tech. Yellow was internet pollution. Green was encrypting data. Pink was IT for clean energy. And lastly, purple was social media and you. So the entire group, everyone, not just the youth, every single member who participated at the IGF were separated into groups. And here we have some images of the various groups. This here was group 1. And here we would have group 2.
Is it stuck? Oh.
And this would have been group 3. And this would be group 4. And this would be group 5. And last, but certainly not least, group 6. So what will happen is that after they deliberated on their topic, they will then have to do a presentation as seen in this particular photo. So usually members, each of the team leaders of the particular group, an assigned, well, actually an elected, nominated, volunteered team leader will then do a presentation on their particular group. Of course, while one of the members are presenting, the others are waiting for their presentation. After all the presentations that were made, a very exhaustive document was then produced, a report on the Youth Collaborative Exchange, the future of the Internet. This was very commendable by the youth, and I'll just quickly scan through some of the stuff that was done here without actually going through the process of reading any of the things. We have the topics. Topic 1. I won't go through any of the deliberations or any of the findings. Topic 5, 6, internet and pollution. It's not in any order. It's, I guess, how they presented. Encrypted data. We actually have their notes and so on. Details on this document could actually be found at the site, TTIGF-youth. So it's a very exhaustive document, and the participation by the youth is extremely commendable. I think, like I said, this was definitely one of the highlights of the IGF. Having the youth involved and their level of participation was really, really tremendous. Our third and final panel or session for the day was data hosting. Should it be done locally or internationally? Our expert panelists include Ian Galt, General Manager, Enterprise Services of Telecommunications Services of Trinidad and Tobago Limited, Darren Mohammed, Corporate Business Manager for Caribbean and Country Representative, Microsoft Trinidad, Keenan Singh, Chief Executive Officer of Airlink Communication Limited, and our very own George Gobin, who is a director of the Trinidad and Tobago Multistakeholder Advisory Group, and George will be the moderator for this particular session. And this is the panel as they were in full session on that day. And these are some of the takeaways from their discussion. Industry has moved from central localized hosting to cloud hosting. Data residency is no longer an issue. Classified data should, however, be locally hosted. There is a need to engage the youth in this activity to prevent a brain drain. Local hosting can be billed in local currency. International hosting can provide a more cost-effective service. International hosting is more capable in data security and meeting international standards.
We cannot overemphasize the multi-stakeholder aspect of the Trinidad and Tobago IGF. This is very important, and it stemmed from the whole formation of the Trinidad and Tobago Multi-Stakeholder Advisory Committee, because it's always better when you have a diversity of views contributing to discussions. You have representatives from government, you have representatives from business, you have representatives from the academic community, from end users, from the technical community. When you have all of these players in the room, whatever decision or policy position you end up with has far more legitimacy if one of these players was excluded. So the Trinidad and Tobago Internet Governance Forum is a very important activity, particularly from the perspective of multi-stakeholderism and inclusion of diverse perspectives and diverse backgrounds and views.
Yes, I agree with Albert. And if you just take a look, for example, at the internet itself, it all started with collaboration. So the model that we're using nowadays is all about collaboration. And I think we should use that same model to make, for example, things better in our own communities as well.
Okay, and I see I'm getting a very hard look, a stern look from Tracy. So we really want to thank our viewers for this opportunity of listening to what we had to say. But congratulations, Tracy. Congratulations, TT Mag, for this very important event.
Again, it has been a pleasure and honor to be in Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you.
Let me take this opportunity to invite you all to our Trinidad and Tobago Internet Governance Forum 2021, which will be held on Friday, the 29th of January, 2021. Thank you all very much for viewing.
Thank you very much, Shanae. I guess quite a detailed and comprehensive report there on the IGF. But I think we're okay because we won't have a similar report from St. Vincent and the Grenadines available right now. So I think the time was well spent. What struck me from that, in fact, was some of the comments coming from the UN MAG chair and the Minister of Public Administration from Trinidad and Tobago about ICT and what a difference a month makes, because as I'm sure you will hear shortly from the UN IGF Secretariat with respect to their plans for this year's IGF, you know, it's chalk and cheese between what was expected in January and what is being planned now. And similarly for the Trinidad and Tobago minister's comment, there has been a sea change in terms of the speed that is envisaged for digital transformation, I should say, certainly in the government service in Trinidad and Tobago. So we are seeing that this gives a graphic representation of the impact of COVID-19 on the world in just one fell swoop. Coming out of this TTIGF, I think the youth-led collaborative workshop was a nice touch, and hopefully our session this afternoon could be a good beginning for youth input in the whole internet governance forum processes. Data hosting was one of the things that they looked at, and we should have a couple sessions where that issue is discussed in this IGF over the next couple of days as well. So thanks to the TT IGF for this video, and I think it's unfortunate though that I don't think we have a representative of theirs signed in as to take any questions, but we'll try to get any required answers before our 16th IGF is done. And in fact, we could also invite them back to the open mic session on Friday. So we'll move on with the reports then. And I'll invite now Mr. Kevon Swift from LACNIC. He's going to give us an update on the LACIGF plan or activities and plans for 2020. Kevon, are you there?
Yes, Nigel, I'm here.
Okay.
So again, thank you.
Yes, please go ahead.
I'm just sharing my presentation at this point. And also let me turn on my camera. Good morning once again to everyone.
Yes.
And be giving you the update on the LACIGF process. The last event was LACIGF 12, which took place last year from the 6th to the 8th of August in La Paz, Bolivia. And of course, many of you may be wondering, why is LACNIC giving the report on LACIGF? LACNIC has served as the secretariat to the LACIGF process since its inception in 2008. And interestingly enough, this is the last year that we will serve as the secretariat. We have a plan to completely devolve this function from our registry, and therefore we will remain just as an ordinary member within the process. My update today will focus on two things. I'm looking at the thematic discussions that occurred under LACIGF 12, and also I'll talk a bit about the LACIGF analytical review, which has been taking place, and I'll give you a status update as to where we are on that front. When it comes to LACIGF itself, for those of you who are new to the internet governance world, LACIGF started as the primary discussion place, or space rather, for regional internet governance exchanges since 2008. At that time, it was constituted as a regional preparatory meeting for the global IGF that was expected to take place in Hyderabad, India in December of 2008. But since then, it has taken much more of a self-appropriated, self-serving form, in that it is the key space where internet governance discussions occur within Latin America and the Caribbean, outside of the mandates of established regional actors. So for instance, we did have a successful meshing of the LACIGF process along with the ELAC process back in 2016. And for those of you who may not be aware, ELAC is the UN ECLAC-driven process for aligning digital strategy and implementation of digital strategy by governments across Latin America and the Caribbean. We also had a successful collaboration with the Caribbean IGF here in Trinidad and Tobago in 2011, and it's always has been an experience that LACIGF has wished to repeat in some form or the other. The LACIGF as well has a constituted steering committee, what would be the equivalent of the multi-stakeholder advisory group at the UN level. We just call it a multi-stakeholder steering committee, comprised of 4 stakeholder groupings: academia, the technical community, government, and civil society. And an interesting fact is that each of these communities are responsible for their own information dissemination, their own selection of representatives for the stakeholder grouping, and for the own cycling and self-management. The LACIGF steering committee, the LACIGF secretariat, doesn't get involved in that level of management. And of course, the LACIGF is known for its open process. There are open calls for hosting the LACIGF process. There are open calls for members of the steering committee, or at least a reminder to everyone that the time limits or term limits for a member are up. And of course, there's always a call for issues that occur every year around the months of February and March, issues that would then be made into various types of sessions for the actual face-to-face event. Well, face-to-face is something that we all have to contend with what the alternative would be from here on forward. So going straight into LACIGF 12, I'm just going to give you a summary of what the thematic discussions touched on. We had sessions dealing with human rights, freedom of expression on the internet, surveillance technologies in Latin America and the Caribbean, the progress and challenges of the NRIs. The NRIs are the national, regional, sub-regional, and youth IGF initiatives across the region, across the world, I should say. The future of internet governance, and as a presentation on the analytical review of the LACIGF. We also spoke about digitalization and productive transformation, internet access, not only just accessing the internet, but quality issues, especially in a short-term dispensation. This was probably, in hindsight, forewarning of the global pandemic. We also spoke about internet and jurisdiction, and this was really a government-led space, talking about the importance of protecting rights in public and private spheres, protection of encryption and its rights for safe internet communications. Of course, protecting encryption is a human rights issue. And on the day 3, we spoke about cooperative approaches for internet security, the ethos of having robust security online in cyberspace is that we need collaborative and cooperative approaches. And of course, a security system is as strong as its weakest link. So that will include, to a great extent, a level of sensitization and capacity building among end users. We spoke about cyber events and cybersecurity, the impact of multi-stakeholder approaches in the Bolivian internet governance space. So this was important as host country. It was very useful for us to understand what internet governance meant for Bolivia. One of the things that you would know if you were following internet governance spaces across the world is that there's no one-size-fits-all multi-stakeholder approach. Multi-stakeholder approaches in general have very different features as you go from space to space. And in a number of studies captured on the NRIs within Latin America and the Caribbean, we have come up with, or we can see, I should say, about 3 different types of multi-stakeholder spaces, 3 different ends that they meet. The primary one being sensitization, of course, but there's also multi-stakeholder spaces that treat more with more democratic process in the formulation of digital policy. And then last but not least, multi-stakeholder spaces that are part and key of solutions and policy options when it comes to implementing such solutions for identified problems and issues. And last but not least, automated decision-making and artificial intelligence. So whereas you have as a global trend, the deployment of artificial intelligence, there is a lot of talk as to what extent does that automated decision-taking happen. And of course, you want to limit it for ethical questions, questions on life and death of people. So seeing how prepared the region is on that front was a discussion that was necessary to have because there hasn't been that much discussion about artificial intelligence at all within Latin America and the Caribbean. And I would just like to go back a bit into the first session, just to give you an idea as to what some of the crux of some of these debates were. So the freedom of expression session really dealt with matters of government-driven regulation versus other governance approaches, including self-regulation, community approaches, private ordering by private entities, and these rules that will ensure that end users, citizens, do enjoy at all times the ability to express themselves freely. The synopsis of that debate is that sometimes governments are not in the know to fully protect these rights without bringing some sort of unanticipated harm to the technical underpinnings of the internet. Hence, it's really a question of taking a measured approach as to how you protect citizens' rights and their right to express themselves freely on the internet. So that's just a synopsis as to the flavor or the details, the ins and outs of some of the debates that we saw in the LACIGF last year. These are all available, meaning the recordings and the reports, on the LACIGF website, lacigf.org, and it's free for you to consult at any point in time. But if you have any one-on-one questions as it pertains to the topics that I just presented, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm going to spend the rest of this presentation time talking about the LACIGF analytical review, because this is an important endeavor within this region. It's an analytical review that also takes into consideration the work that had been taking place at the global level in terms of the recommendations of the high-level panel on digital cooperation, which is a UN-established panel comprising many actors from around the world on how to further the work of the Internet Governance Forum. It was led, for instance, by Dr. Jovan Kubalia of the Diplo Foundation. You had Bill and Melinda Gates. You had a lot of prominent actors that were involved in that body of work. And of course, they came up with a number of recommendations to be implemented in what would be an IGF plus dispensation. But I won't talk too much about that because I know right after me, Mr. Shengetai Asangome actually touched more on those issues. So back to the analytical review. We undertook this analytical review. This was specifically done by Raul Echeverria in a capacity as a consultant, where he was able to achieve 157 interviews using an open-ended question format on observations about the LACIGF in the past, taking stock of what the LACIGF has achieved in the past and what is yet to be achieved. And based on his study, he came up with a number of improvements in 6 categories that we're going to look at briefly. These 6 categories include participation, content, format, structure, intersessional work, and financing. When it came to participation, the majority of respondents felt that more dissemination on the activities of the LACIGF was required. For the most part, dissemination occurs via a number of mailing lists associated with the LACIGF and also through some of the collaborating entities such as LACNIC, but there needed to be a boost in the dissemination of information surrounding LACIGF. When it came to the specific events, the community responded that they wanted to have earlier notice of the details of the agenda, the speakers, etc. There's also a call for an enhanced collaborative spirit among actors involved in the LACIGF process, formal communication to governments through ministries of foreign affairs, which was one of the things that had not been consistent. That vehicle was employed in 2016 for the experience of matching LACIGF along with the ELAC process. But outside of that 2016 experience, a lot of government representatives have been involved by their own volition, which, as we are well aware, does not necessarily work in that way across governments, especially depending on their familiarity with the issues and their willingness to have dedicated representation at these various spaces. And the community also outlined the need for more high-level governmental meetings along with the LACIGF. On the content front, the community had asked for more concise agenda setting, as opposed to just a hodgepodge of issues. maybe the approach would be to probably just choose 2 or 3 of those issues and work more detailed on such issues. Greater recognition of the region's diversity. And we could well appreciate in the Caribbean that sometimes the question of diversity, when we say Latin America and Caribbean, isn't sometimes present, but that diversity also extends to Latin America, where within Latin America, Central America has very distinct features to the Andean community, to Mercosur, or the South Cone, and other areas. There was also a call for, when we spoke about the issues, the call for issues, that those public consultations should be combined with consultations with prominent internet governance actors and also with the local IGFs. Local IGFs or local NRIs have been increasing steadily in terms of the emergence and their continued meetings since about 2015, thereabouts onwards. There was also a call that LACIGF produce more tangible outcomes. So for instance, there were suggestions that the discussions of LACIGF should be summarized, priorities identified, and when possible, group and align particular identities and action lines related to an issue. And also, the community felt that there shouldn't be a repetition of content and discussion. So that means, for instance, we shouldn't just have a discussion on human rights every time just for having its sake. It really should be more tangent on what is occurring at the bottom, what is occurring on the ground, and whether it's topical, whether it's feasible, whether it's applicable across the entire region. When it came to format, the community asked for more interactive and innovative spaces. So I think many of the participants at the LACIGF and probably also at the Global IGF are somewhat wary of the typical panel format. There had been a specific recommendation for more breakout groups, more town hall type formats. The community also called for less repetition of speakers and moderators, so less of the usual suspects, the familiar faces, and more of up-and-coming identities. I think Albert touched on that a bit earlier in the previous panel, talking about the wear out that you have from the Dave Anans and the Jacqueline Morrises, and ensuring that we have new faces come to the fore and take leadership positions at that place. And of course, enhanced transparency in selection of speakers and moderators is also cited as an issue to be worked on. When it came to intersessional work, there was a suggestion that we had more focused, ongoing work on issues via virtual working groups. These working groups would be around thematic issues, enhanced communication with other forums and organizations. That could be akin probably to the idea of the cooperation accelerator at the global level. So again, I'm assuming that Shangatai may address these things, but at the global level, some of the outcomes to be implemented include policy incubator, a cooperation accelerator, an IGF hotline for NRIs to constitute their spaces. So the cooperation accelerator is really about the issues that are raised within the LACIGF, that those issues and their findings are brought at the helm of UN ECLAC or PAHO or any other, or CARICOM or any other of the regional organizations around. And also, there was a call for there to be an improvement in how we archive and how we document information at LACIGF. When it came to structure, the ongoing recommendation was for a steering committee that would be empowered, that would have greater leadership and visibility. Right now, the members of the steering committee all participate on equal footing, and there's no chair. Within the steering committee, everyone is on equal footing, and the secretariat simply provides an administrative service to them. But when it comes to steering committee issues, the recommendations also point towards there being clearly delineated roles and responsibilities and clarity in the eligibility criteria and processes. As I mentioned earlier, the stakeholder groups are actually self-managing, but it was felt that from a steering committee standpoint, a lot more of the institutionalization of the steering committee needed to occur, and that will also help in giving continuity to the steering committee's work as members leave and are replaced, etc. And again, the community had given significant support for there to be a dedicated steering committee created for the LACIGF. As I mentioned earlier, LACNIC has served the role of the secretariat, dedicated secretariat. LACNIC has served the role as a secretariat to the LACIGF process since 2008, but it's really an extension of what LACNIC does within its own community of our event organization capacities, our web design capacities, our communications capacities, etc. So a call for a dedicated secretariat. And last but not least, the community reflected its validation of our financing model. The financing model behind the LACIGF is a trust fund where various entities are called upon to remove any individual demarcators of their companies, of their brands, and to pool those funds where those funds will actually meet the needs of running the LACIGF event. And well, on that front, the sub-point there is that depending on what these donors feel, if there is an interest in LACIGF issues, there would be more donations. So instead of just setting a target to deal with a huge plurality of issues, the donations would be in tandem with the content to be addressed, and therefore smaller donations, smaller content, smaller event, larger donations, more content, greater event. And there's also a suggestion that that LACIGF analyze complementary membership models. Where are we in that entire analytical review? Those results were presented to the entire community last year during LACIGF 12. And at this point in time, both Raul Echeverria with Carolina Aguirre, another prominent name you may know, involved in IG matters across Latin America. She's also the convener of the IG diploma run at the University of Buenos Aires. They are actually in the process of seeing how these outcomes will be implemented specifically. And our update will be given at the next event, which is LACIGF 13. LACIGF 13 is carded to take place between the 8th and the 10th of September. For the first time ever, it's going to be an entirely online event. And I would encourage all of you to go to the LACIGF website and register for LACIGF 13. One of the features, as some of you may know, is that there is dedicated language support into English, French, and English, Spanish, and Portuguese for everything. That's because it's based on a LACNIC platform, and even at LACNIC, we have dedicated language support for all of our activities from here onwards. And without further ado, that ends my LACIGF report. So I'll be very keen to hear any questions or comments you may have. And if not, I'm always available.
Yes. Thank you very much, Kevin. Much appreciated. You've mentioned the dates for LACIGF 13. So as I was saying earlier, we can't get together, but certainly the online modes has the potential for persons, a wider range of persons to participate. So I think that's very much encouraged. There is one thing you mentioned, I'll take the opportunity of moderating to ask right now. You said LACNIC is easing out of the role of secretariat I wasn't quite clear who's moving in, if it's that committee that you talked about or what, or if that decided.
Right. So that is the exact idea. So LACNIC moves out. We institutionalize what a secretariat is expected to do, and that secretariat would be staffed with persons purely dedicated on LACIGF. Outside of the actual events, that staff would work on coordinating the intersessional issues, and of course there will be attendant compensation and the like for that staff. But instead of it being an extension of what LACNIC does for the LACNIC events in its community, we have decided we're going to wash our hands. We think that it has definitely grown up.
Right.
This would be the 12th year that we would be providing secretarial services to LACIGF. So as it becomes a teenager, it's time for it to spread its wings.
Yes, indeed. All right, thank you. Yes, that's a similar thought to what the CTU is trying to do with the Caribbean Internet Development Foundation. So we hope that we do see the stakeholders coming together to have a broader base of support for these type of efforts going forward. Okay, thank you very much. Let me move on to our last presenter for this session. And we are back to Mr. Chengetai Masango, who is the Program and Technology Manager of the UNIGF Secretariat. And he'll bring us up to date on the upcoming UNIGF and preparations and so on. Chengetai, the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you very much. And I think I may disappoint Kevin a little bit because I'm not going to get into too much detail on everything that's been going on. Otherwise, we'll be here until next Tuesday. So I'll just use broad strokes. And then if you have any specific questions, of course, I am willing to answer those. So to start off with, let me just do a very quick recap of the IGF 2019, which was held in Berlin from the 25th to the 29th of November. And the overarching theme there was One World, One Net, One Vision. And this was the largest IGF that we've held, and I'll get into the stats a little bit later, but let me just go into the main themes. So we had 3 interlinked main themes, which was data governance, digital inclusion, safety, security, safety, stability, and resilience. And new to last year's IGF, we had support for the Global South. The German government very generously gave us $1 million to be spent over 3 years to support the Global South, not just to attend IGF meetings, but also throughout the years. So last year, this year, not so much because it is the COVID-19, but next year as well, we are able to give small grants, around $6,000 to $10,000 to national and regional IGFs to help them with the finances to prepare their meetings. So we are very grateful for that, and I think it has helped a lot. This year, we're still able to do that, but it's a little bit more difficult now since most of the world cannot congregate into one area, and then giving support for online as far as internet costs are concerned, because I know in the Global South, internet costs can be very, very expensive. We're trying to find a mechanism to do that. In the UN, it hasn't been done as such, but for the IGF, we are pushing forward and we are establishing the ways that it's done. So it's going a little bit slowly, and hopefully we can help some people. We also had last year the parliamentarian track that concentrated on the legislative side, getting parliamentarians together. I think we had from 56 different countries, over 100 parliamentarians that came in, and we tried to sensitize them. Internet governance issues and how to make those good policy instruments. And also sustainability. Now for just a quick look at the statistics. We had over 200 sessions. We had 3,679 on-site participants and about 2,152 online participants. We had 42% of the delegates that were female, and we are trying to inch to 50%. This year was actually a landmark. We're talking about 2020, where we had 50% of the workshop proposals being submitted by females. So we have gender parity as far as the workshop proposal process is concerned, and that's very good. And also, if you will note that our MAG, Multistakeholder Advisory Group, there is also gender parity there. So gender parity is very, very important. We had 64 workshops, 36 open forums, 4 best practice forum sessions, 14 dynamic coalitions. I won't go into them, but you can find all this information on our website where you can find them. And we had 6 national and regional and youth initiatives, collaborative sessions that the NRIs did, because we are trying to integrate more the national and regional initiatives into the global IGFs so that they can take part in the discourse of the global IGF, because we feel that their unique experiences will, of course, enhance everybody's knowledge. We had 50 IGF village booths. So that's as far as the topics goes. And we also had, for our opening ceremony, we did have the UN Secretary General and Ms. Angela Merkel, the President of Germany, who opened up. And we were very grateful for them to come. I think the Secretary General also came in 2018, so his attention is very much appreciated. And he also spoke about the high-level panel on digital cooperation and also the roadmap that he was going to commission and which he announced in June this year. Right. I think that's all I can say for the IGF 2019, except for the outputs. Now, for the outputs for the IGF 2019, we had, of course, the chairman's summary, which is our traditional document summarizing what went on in the meeting. And we had press highlights, and we had the Berlin IGF messages, where we asked every single session organizer to submit key messages or key takeaways from their session. So just one or two sentences that they think is the key takeaway from their session. So we compiled this, and we have also published this. Also, with the intersession activities for last year, we had the best practice forums, which we've also published. The host government did the Jimmy Schultz message from the parliamentarians. So they did publish a message and elements for small and medium enterprises dealing with the internet, and the high-level meeting summary. Of course, we also had the traditional IGF 2019 session reports, etc., which can be accessed on our website. And the Geneva Internet Platform, they've always been involved in every single IGF, either as the Geneva Internet Platform or as Diplo Foundation, and they do their own separate just-in-time reporting and daily briefs for every single day of the IGF meeting. And I think people do find them very useful, but of course, these aren't official from the UN, but they're still very relevant and very accurate as well. For these outputs, what we do within the UN family, we send them to UNESCO, we send them to the ITU. We ask, like UNESCO to put them into their libraries to make them accessible to people. We also send them to the OECD, to the Council of Europe and the European Union, so that they can distribute the outputs to their members. And I think, of course, this is very useful, and we will continue to do it this year as well. Now, as you know, for 2020, it was a little challenging for us, so to speak. We had started off very, very well. We have our chair, Ms. Anriette Esterhuvsen. She's very good, and we were going on and very well. And then, of course, February and March came. And now we had to, in fact, change. Instead of having our annual meeting, which is supposed to be in Poland, now we're having it online as a virtual IGF 2020, but which is fine. I mean, the whole world had to change. And of course, we, of all the other UN secretariats or departments, I think we are the ones who are most able and are the quickest to be able to turn around and shift totally online, because, as I mentioned before, all our previous IGFs, we had basically the same number of participants online as well as offline. So we could also leverage that experience and turn it online. So for this year, what we do have is that we do the main thematic tracks, which is data, environment, inclusion, and trust. We decided to make them one word, to make them a little bit more punchier. And I think you could, I mean, they're all still very relevant now. Online trust, there's all these online trust issues. Sorry, I've got a visitor. That's what you get from working from home. Etc. that we have. And then we have our, so we're going to have it in two phases. So we have it in phase 1, which is 2 to 6th of November, and phase 2, which is 9 to 7th of November. And the main theme for the IGF 2020 is Internet for Human Resilience and Solidarity. And the, I don't know if you want to call it a motto, is virtually together, because as I said earlier on in another meeting, we are virtually together. I mean, we may have to physically distance ourselves, but we can still remain social on the internet. And I think the internet is the great savior for this period in time and this tiring time which we have to deal with the COVID-19 pandemic and the ways to deal with it. Let me just go on to the structure of this meeting. Now, for the structure for the IGF 2020, we are going to have in phase 1, as I mentioned, we're going to have the normal day 0 events. We're going to have the thematic introductory sessions, which I mentioned again, data, environment, inclusion, and trust. So this is just to introduce to people, to have them a grounding to see what all of these sessions and what these streams are. And then we have the traditional newcomer session, so that we can tell newcomers what the IGF is all about and the structure. We have our DC and NRI sessions, open forums, and in this period, as we traditionally do, we do the testing as well. So by the time phase 2 comes up, we would have ironed out any of the issues that we are going to have. And we're also going to have the networking sessions, and the IGF Village is going to be online. We have produced something very nice so people can go around and browse around for and see organizations, internet governance related activities. And I'm also looking forward to that. Now with phase 2, we have the opening and closing, which is the traditional opening and closing. And we have, of course, our main sessions and the workshops, over 200 workshops. And we have the high level track. And, we are going to continue with the parliamentary session and have more networking sessions as well. Now, the high-level leaders track will engage leaders from all disciplines on the role of internet governance in the time of uncertainty. So that's the theme for the high-level track. So internet governance in the time of uncertainty. So this is broader than just the COVID-19, but how do you deal with emergency situations, etc. And of course, the trust issue comes, the access issue comes as well. So we're going to be dealing with all that, and we're going to try and get the leaders, the ministers, the CEOs, the heads of the NGOs and IGOs as well to come and have a discussion. So we don't want to just to have speeches. We want to have a discussion and also have an opportunity for the audience as well to ask questions. We're also concentrating on the youth, and I'll go to the youth, what we're going to do for the youth just now. But the other thing I wanted to just to touch upon is our outputs as well. So we have the outputs from the parliamentary track, from the community-led sessions, and from the introductory webinars that we have and the high-level leader tracks, and these are all the messages. And as of last year, we're going to help to distribute these messages. As far as the engagement with the youth goes, last year in 2019, we did have a lot of youth actually come in our open mic session and complain that there wasn't enough for the youth to do. I mean, I responded to them as well, is that the IGF is a bottom-up process, and it is really up to the constituents and also up to the stakeholders to engage. They have to come forward. I mean, we will do our part to make sure that there is a space for them, but it's not a top-down. They don't have to wait for an invitation. They just have to step up and engage. And so this year we're having a series of events for the youth, and the Polish government is also very much involved, and they are supporting it. They had begun supporting it at the beginning in January, and of course we had to postpone the IGF in Poland until next year, but they're still very much committed to it. And so we're having it with the government of Poland, NASK in cooperation with the youth IGFs and also ISOC's Youth Ambassadors Program. And it is engaging the youth as speakers and panelists or resource persons for the IGF to make sure that they are integrated. So we did start off with our first webinar on the 11th May, and then our next webinar is going to be on 9th September, 1800 hours UTC. And now this information is on our website, and also it has been distributed to the NRIs. If there's still people who are not sure about this and who also want to engage, I wholly encourage you just to contact us, and we will give you their information. You can just contact me directly. You can go to the IGF website. You can contact Anya. You can just contact whomever you feel good contacting. And then on the 30th of October, we were going to have a publication on good practices on youth engagement in internet governance. And there's going to be an IGF 2020 Youth Summit on the 23rd of October, 1400 hours UTC. And of course, this is all going to be online. And then, of course, there's going to be a lot of youth engagement in the IGF 2020 meeting, particularly during the phase 2 of the meeting. So with that, the next thing I should talk about is that we are going to, this has been also a very interesting year for the IGF, because we did have the publication for the Secretary General's roadmap for digital cooperation. And in his roadmap, the Secretary General calls for action to connect, respect, and protect all people in the digital age. And I think that is all very important. Paragraph 93 of the roadmap calls on for global digital cooperation, and ideas have emerged with a view of making the Internet Governance Forum more responsive and relevant to the current digital issues. And then we also have the talk of the IGF Plus and changing the MAG to make it more responsive, especially there's also talk about this high-level segment that should be attached to the MAG in some form. We're not too sure exactly what or how that is going to take place, but there's still discussions that is underway on that. It also specifically calls for forging stronger links amongst the global forum, and that is for the national, sub-regional, and youth initiatives. The Secretary General, the high-level panel, looked at it and saw the importance of the national and regional initiatives. And then, so we are going to have some webinars on this. The MAG chair is also leading some webinars in October. And there's also going to be discussion on this during the virtual IGF. So please, I invite all of you to please come and to please engage in this. Now, I think with that, I think I will stop there and just give you just a reminder again of when the virtual IGF is going to take place. That is 2 to 6 November for phase 1, and for phase 2, 9 to 17th of November, and hope to see you all online. And of course, I will remain here for questions if you have questions on anything I've just said. As I said, I just briefly touched on a number of things and not all of them. So thank you. Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much, Chengetai. That was very, very informative. Let's see now, in terms of questions, what do we have? We have support for LACNIC's approach in, for future management of the LACIGF. We have a question from Deidre Williams. Do you plan any reporting specifically about the context where remote participants stop being them and become us? I'm not sure I understand exactly, but any reporting specifically about the context where remote participants stop being them and become us, I suppose from the point of view where everything goes online is probably what she's saying. I don't know if anyone has any thoughts on that, although I think one of my colleagues is taking that question. June Paris asked about remote moderators training. With these, and maybe Changatai, that might be one for you to take up. With the fully remote mode of operation, there's going to be a need for remote moderators and to have them trained for the effort. Do you have any special plans in that regard that you would like to share?
Yes, exactly. We are going to have training for remote moderators, and at the moment we're tallying up the number of people that we can rely upon, and there also might be a call for remote moderators to volunteer to remotely moderate the meetings as well. And it's also very important because it's not just going to be in Zoom, we're going to be having it in YouTube and maybe in Facebook. So we would need people to actually look and see and capture any questions and feed them to the chair or to the actual moderator of the meeting. So that would be very, very much appreciated.
Okay, good. I have a question, I guess, for all of us who organize or convene these internet governance fora. In terms of the linkages, right? We are working collaboratively. We are communicating better, I think, at the various levels, the national level, the regional level, the global level, with a view to strengthening the linkages between the work at our various levels. The UNIGF, I know, has this NRI's forum, and I am I'm a member on that. So I give and receive information with the UN Secretariat with respect to what we're doing and what they're doing and what input they might need and so on. So that, I think, exists semi-formally. If I look at the regional area now, Latin America and the Caribbean and the national level. Kevin, maybe you could make a comment from the LACIGF point of view in terms of level of satisfaction with the linkages with sub-regions and national IGFs in the LAC area, and whether any specific actions being taken to strengthen that. And maybe from the national IGF reps present, whether you'll think that, or how do you think linkages with the CIGF and LACIGF could be improved? So maybe I'll let Kevin speak first about LACIGF.
Thanks, Nigel. Most certainly, I think that is a recurrent discussion point, the idea that the national spaces should have stronger links with the regional space, and even the regional space somewhat anticipate and address what happens at the global space. And whereas I would say before that these were just discussions, nice to haves, as I had mentioned earlier, we really saw a huge uptick in the convening of the national NRIs from about 2015 onwards, especially in Latin America and Caribbean. In going forward with the reformed LACIGF process, that has to be key and center to what we do next. Because LACIGF, for the most part, had very good intentions and accomplished what it needed to accomplish. It started first as a prep meeting for global, and then it became somewhat self-serving or just facing the region per se. But that we understand what internet governance is, or at least the world has a better grasp of it. And we understand that a lot more needs to take place, not only from those of us within the technical community, but others. I am really interested in seeing more digital creatives come to the fore, more other sectors come here, because at this juncture, it's not just about us and keeping the internet going. We're talking about the people who provide content, people who conduct business, people who conduct social relations. I mean, we talk about social distancing, but it's really physical distancing, and the social component is ever more critical at this juncture. So that sort of interworking is going to be a key feature in what I will call the LACIGF version 2. We have had, and I would say this very honestly, we've had on an ad hoc basis a dedicated space for NRI since about 2017 at LACIGF. In a session that first used to occur before the main sessions, then it came into the main sessions, and now it's been recurring, but more needs to be done between that and the rest of the process itself. It's not just about showcasing, but really intertwining, building relationships and leveraging common points where we can leverage.
Right, okay. I wonder if David, or who else was it? Actually, it's really only David, or in fact, anyone else who might have an opinion in terms of interface between our Caribbean IGFs and the CIGF, say, or the Caribbean IGF, national IGFs and the LACIGFs. What you think about the current linkages and what thoughts you have to maybe to strengthen them? You're still muted, David.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Oh, can you hear me now, Nigel?
Yeah.
Okay. I do think there's a space for, if I could call it sort of like a committee of committees or a committee of chairs, where there is essentially a forum for the sort of like ongoing discussions between representatives from the various NRIs regionally and sub-regionally within the Caribbean, and then like larger sort of Latin American space, to sort of like keep the discussion going, because it's very easy for us to sort of meet once a year, have these conversations, and then sort of return to our individual territories, and and that sort of dies there, or at least it's not given the sort of degree of drive that it might otherwise have. Just like within, not even necessarily at a full United Nations level, but within the regional sphere, possibly, as you guys sort of like, you mentioned, it was mentioned that the website's being rebuilt and there's going to be discussion for on the site. So it's possible that a sort of like just something like that for the discussion of regional issues and regional coordination and sharing of best practices, something like that might be a simple way to, to facilitate that discussion.
Yeah.
That's really my only 2 cents where that's concerned.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Yes, I think I agree with you. I mentioned when I was talking about the CIGF that our aim has been, and it hasn't come to pass well yet, to enhance the amount of intersessional work that goes on. So certainly use of the discussion fora could be one of those tools to do that. And I think we're taking on board that suggestion as we go forward, especially in the post-COVID-19 time. Okay, I don't seem to have outstanding questions, so I will bring this session to a close, and we're pretty much on time this time. And so therefore, I would like to thank all our speakers and presenters in this session. And we've had a few. We've had, again, Mr. Kevin Swift from LACNIC, we're talking about the LACIGF, Mr. David Smith from the Barbados IGF. We did get the report from the TTIGF. I'll see if we could get them a little more involved as the next couple of days continue. And Mr. Chingatai Masango from the UN IGF Secretariat. I'll say thank you all. Thank you all as well for your attention and your questions.